Okay, we're going to get started. I got my guest presenter. What's that?
Are you recording on Facebook?
No,
Oh.
no, we're recording to my computer so that,
You can edit out anything stupid I say.
or send it into the sound.
Yeah. Get me on the list.
All right, so we're going to get started with our discussion for the night, and here we go. All right, so there's a lot we could get into, but let's just kind of get started with what got you thinking about going into ministry?
Your wife was the first one who got me thinking about that.
She is to blame.
So yes, I had never really thought about it seriously as a career path for one reason or another. I should call it a career path as a vocation. And then one night, this was late in my high school years, Christine was just sitting chatting with me and my mom. She goes, I think you should think about being a pastor. And she listed a couple of reasons, and it's like I just thought I should tell you that. And I was like, okay.
No, I said no pressure, no pressure.
Yeah.
If you want me to be quiet, it's fine. I just need to
right.
say this.
Right.
That's all right.
And that's when I first...
As she twisted your arm.
Yeah. So that's when I first started thinking about it. It still wasn't set, it was just another idea among many. When I finally decided that this is what I wanted to pursue was at the beginning of college, within the first week. When I got to college, my major was economics, stab in the dark, didn't really know what I wanted to do. And for whatever reason, whether by happenstance or God's providence, I gravitated towards the pre-sem group, kind of that clique. And besides their pressuring, I was also able to see what they were studying and learning about. And I contrasted that with some of my classes that included how to learn to work Excel. And I was like, boy, why am I studying this? I can study the Bible and the history of the church. And to me, it just didn't compare. So I had to go for that, pursue that. And there was never a one time, okay, this is what I want to do. I've had my mountaintop experience.
You didn't have an audible voice from God?
No, I didn't.
Peter.
Yeah, no, that did not get the Samuel.
No.
It looked
blinded for a while.
It might have been that. It looked very normal. It looked so normal, like any other career path. There's no mystical, magical happening. You just think about it, and it happens, and God uses normal means, other people, to call you into this. That's how it happened for me.
That's an important thing, though, because how do young men realize maybe I should be thinking about pastoral ministry? It takes people in the church saying, hey, you should think about pastoral ministry. It's not just like they know. And quite honestly, you don't want that to be the case. You want it to be coming from the congregation saying, no, we know. We see this, and this is something you should be thinking about. So if you see it, say it, right? If you see in some of the young men in our congregation, maybe you ought to think about, pastoral ministry, let them know. Or if you see in some of our young women, maybe you should consider, pursuing being a deaconess or a Lutheran school teacher or a DCE or whatever it might be, right? It's gonna be important to come from you. So Peter decides he's going to seminary. I get the phone call at 10 o'clock at night or something.
Sorry.
Pastor, I think I decided on that. Okay, cool. That's great. So then in undergrad, what were your studies? What was your major?
My major was theological languages. So that means I studied languages such as Greek, Hebrew, and Latin in preparation for going to the seminary. They want you to know those because, well, first of all, Greek and Hebrew are the languages that the scriptures were originally written in. So if you want to understand the scriptures, you should understand those. There's also other classes you can take related to theology in general, like mission classes, classes about the Lutheran confessions, all sorts of other things that tend to be electives, and you can major it in those sorts of things too. So I took a few of those classes, mostly the languages, and it was great. It was fantastic. I loved studying that. It's not just like this brute grammar and memorization of vocab. You actually get into the scriptures and start, okay, here's exactly what it says, and here's what that means. Here's what we can draw out of that. And that was a blessing. I was very blessed to be at Concordia, Wisconsin, where you have a lot of great professors who can teach those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And those skills are invaluable now at the seminary, where we're actively using these languages. And it only strengthened my desire to go. Learning all of that, it's like, yeah, I want to keep pursuing this. This is great. And the whole time I was still, there was never like a concrete decision. It was, okay, I should still keep praying about this, thinking about it, but I was just more and more strengthened to go, encouraged to go.
And ultimately, even now, it's not up to you if you get to be a pastor, right? So you have, you got to go through your studies. You'll go on vicarage. If the vicarage pastor says, no, this guy's not suitable to be a pastor, there's going to be a reevaluation, right? Or if the seminary faculty decide, no, this is not a guy that should be a pastor, you could get your degree, have an MDiv, and it would not get you to being a pastor.
Or if he says I shouldn't be a pastor, so when I got my recommendation from him, I had to bribe him. And there's a lot of places where they can say this guy isn't fit for the ministry. And that's not always a super bad thing. Sometimes people, it's just not for them, for one reason or another. It's not that they're horrible.
No, it's
it
not.
It takes a lot of discernment.
But when you think about what does Scripture give us for the requirements for a pastor? It's a high bar, and it should be. We shouldn't be saying, but that guy's he's a really good guy, and he's got good intentions. No, because what happens? We get a mess in congregations because of a guy who shouldn't be in ministry, and it's unfair to the church, and it's not being faithful. So we have the bar given us by the Lord. We have to abide by that, right?
Right. Yeah. If there's a book, I recently read a book in one of my classes that really drives that point home. It's called 6 Books on the Priesthood by Chrysostom, writing in 4th century. I mean, way long ago. But boy, he could have written this in 2023. And it gives you here's the importance of what pastors are doing. Here's the importance that they be able to handle it. And he puts the fear of God in you, and rightly so, in a very real way. I mean, you need to be afraid of this. That's not it.
You need to approach it with fear,
right?
With the correct respect for it.
And any sane person would be afraid.
Sure. Yeah. So you're at Mequon, right? And how does the campus life there impact you, either positively towards ministry or negatively away from it, or whatever?
Yeah, the campus life at CUW in Milwaukee was great for that, because the big centerpiece of the chapel in both physical space and in many students' lives is the chapel. Did I say the chapel? The big centerpiece is the chapel. And they have chapel every morning at 9:30, and then they also have evening services at 9, things like Compline or Vespers once a week. And those are great. Those are really great. It's a good time to meet other friends. In fact, I think that might be the way I got to meeting some of these other guys, pre-sem guys, who encouraged me in it. It's how I met my wife. Yes, thank you for reminding me. Of course, I knew that, obviously. Obviously. So there's lots of good opportunities for that. Whether you're going to become a pastor or not, you should go to those, and they're great. And of course, there's lots of great pastors and professors there who will encourage you in whatever you're doing, and who know a lot about that, can tell you about it.
So when you decide, okay, I want to go to the seminary, right? What are the things that you have to do in order to even be admitted to the seminary?
A very long application.
That's step one.
Step one. It's a long application. You have to get references, and it's good. It's good that they have a long application, but it takes some time and effort. You have to write an autobiography. It's brief, but during the application, for its length, it gives you time to consider. But you also need to keep evaluating yourself, praying about it, considering it, And like we said earlier, for the requirements
Mhm.
for being a pastor, you need to honestly evaluate yourself. Is this something I'm good at? You can always own your skills, that's for sure, but you have to be honest with yourself. Or you can put a lot of future parishioners, put their well-being at stake. Did I start rambling? What was the question again?
All right, so you had to do the long application.
Oh yeah, the application.
What else?
Yeah,
What
yeah,
else?
yeah, yeah.
What
Let's
else?
see.
You need
You need a bachelor's degree,
mhm.
so you can start the application before.
But it could be in anything.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
You could have a
can get
master's
bachelor's
degree in business or.
And a lot of guys
whatever.
do who go into the Sem. They don't have a degree in anything that relates to, like I got theological languages where I was like the poster priest and boy or something like that. But a lot of guys majored in economics, mathematics. I have a guy who's in my class at seminary who's like a math whiz.
I did not major in
No, you did not.
economics or mathematics.
And then they come from really everywhere. A lot of second career guys too. Guys who could be my father or older than my father. Sorry, Dad. Sorry to use you for that point of reference.
That's so old.
That's really old. Wow. And they just decide they want to go. They got a bunch of kids, but it's great.
We were talking to the kids in co-op this morning about Abraham, and he was 75 years old when God called him, and 99 years old when finally he had his son.
Right.
So.
Not quite there, Marty.
All right, so you, on top of that, you have to get the okay from other people,
Yep. I have to get the okay from him.
right?
I have to get the okay from the president of my college, my undergrad college, if it is a Concordia. Because Concordias are linked with the LCMS and are involved in it, you need the president's stamp of approval, and he doesn't know you personally, but he does have access to your records and knows if you did anything stupid that got reported or if you had good grades.
And you
so-
can talk to the precinct director. And make sure.
Yeah, right. And so you have a lot of people that need to say, who have been overseeing your studies.
Then you have to go and get a district interview.
That's right. Oh, I almost forgot about that. This is also recent. He knows, putting me to shame here. Yeah, I have to.
Well, I've been through these things a few times.
You have, yes, that's true. You have to get a district interview. So with the Ohio district, I met with the president of that district and 2 other pastors, and they just asked me a bunch of questions. Some of them harder. Like for example, a lot of pre-sem guys like to think, oh, we got the answers. We got an opinion on everything. Somebody comes up to you and asks you, hey, what's the gospel? It's a lot of things. Where do I start? It's hard to answer concisely, but they put it to you. They make you think about it. It's okay if you don't have all the answers. The point is to stretch you, to get you to think about it. But they really do evaluate you. They ask you some tough questions. Is there anything you're struggling with? They have to ask about a lot of specific sins, especially one like pornography. That's a huge issue today among our young men, and they need to make sure that you're not struggling with that in a way that it's taking over, that you're taking steps to deal with it if you are struggling with it. It's a good thing that they do that. Unfortunately, a lot of young men are involved in that. And various other sins that tend to drag down, that they got to deal with. It's important to have, like you said, good men,
Yeah.
faithful men.
All right, so finally you get accepted into seminary, right? What does it look like to go to the seminary? What does your day look like, or week look like?
Yeah, so from the student's perspective, it works a lot like an undergrad college. Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes, Tuesday, Thursdays, roughly around 15 credits, give or take. There's the unique thing about the seminary really is the community there. You're not going to find a community like that anywhere else, pretty much. It's amazing having so many like-minded guys, all really passionate about this, and great minds and professors there, all teaching you. And there's a lot of events outside of class that like everybody goes to. There's options, but there's extracurricular activities where you study something. A lot of just plain social fun events. Tons of families, tons of little kids everywhere, which is great. And that's it, like that
Speaking
one.
of,
My child is
right?
making a lot of noise.
Wow.
She's giving her input. Thank you, Dorothy. And so that's what's different about an undergrad college, and it's great. There's chapel every day. And I get to hear preaching 5 days a week, well more, a Sunday, 6 days a week, and that's a real blessing that I probably take for granted more often than I should. And so you do your reading, do your homework, go to classes, go to some of these social events. I also have a field work church, which is where they assign me a local church in the area, and I help out on Sundays in some capacity. I don't preach until I take a preaching class, and they say, okay, you're good, you can go preach. But helping out on Sundays, doing normal classwork stuff, going to social events, and it's great. The community there, again, I just cannot stress that enough. It's amazing. It's so great.
So what kind of classes do you have?
Yeah, so in my first quarter that I just completed, I had classes like Gospels, and because we regard the Gospels as so formative for the church and so important because they're Jesus' earthly words of ministry, you have three classes on the Gospels, Matthew, Mark and Luke, and John, and you just study that Gospel for that quarter. I also had church history, where you start from right after Jesus' ministry, right after his ascension, you just start working through the history of the church, which is really fascinating. It's amazing, a lot of things we take for granted, like the creeds, were fought over very hard, over a lot of controversy. So that was fun to learn about. I had a missions class, I had a liturgics class.
Hold on. Flag on the flag. What in the world is liturgics?
Liturgics.
All
So
right.
liturgics is something you all also do every Sunday. So the liturgy, the form of service that we do every Sunday.
Learning how to actually conduct the service.
Learning how to conduct it.
What the different
Exactly.
things are about, what it means.
What all the fancy names are for the currently not present altar utensils for the sacrament. So that's liturgics. That's great. And you also just come to a basic understanding of why do we do what we do every Sunday. And there's good reasons to it, believe it or not. You also have Greek and Hebrew readings classes to make sure you actually didn't forget all the stuff you learned in your Greek and Hebrew classes. Yes, we have a question, Matthew.
Did you ever study the Dr. Seuss liturgy?
I did not study the Dr. Seuss liturgy. I have heard of it. That's an elective, 4 years old, we get to take that one.
That's for clown seminary.
That's right.
Okay. All right. Before we go on any further, questions that other people have at this point. Rick.
So what kinds of training do you get in those really challenging areas, like trying to prepare you for church discipline when necessary, or other challenges, I guess that'd be.
Yeah, good question, because that's going to be probably one of the most relevant things. There's classes that I'll take later. A class called pastoral counseling, pastoral theology. I think there's even an elective on just like divorce and marriage and how to work through those situations, because that unfortunately is a prevalent set of problems. So those classes exist, and they're thankfully taught by guys who have been in the parish for years and have dealt with a lot of this, have a lot of experience with it, as well as have thought about it and read about it a lot. So
What about burnout? Like trying to
Burnout?
keep you from getting burned out. I hear that's kind
yeah,
of a thing.
yeah, it is. I'm guessing maybe you could speak more to that if they get to that in a specific class.
Yeah, they'll talk about that in pastoral theology and pastoral ministry, but one of the best things that has happened in the last, 15, 20 years in the LCMS is the development of what's called doxology. And it's designed by a very experienced pastor who actually was a seminary professor as well for a while, and a clinical psychologist, and they get men from different parishes together, and you spend several days just being filled back up and getting equipped with, all right, here's how you deal with some of these different things, and being able to talk through things with other people, and so that helps with the ongoing prevention of burnout.
Another question we have back there?
When it comes to the theological coursework and stuff that you do, is there anything explicitly more than just like the church history from the time of the apostles onward? Do you study any of the later theologians and stuff like that in your curriculum?
Oh yeah, well, like do you mean like Reformation guys? Do you mean like contemporary guys?
I mean actually real Catholic people before the Reformation.
Oh yeah, that was my first time. that was what I just spent doing for a quarter in one of my classes. Yeah, names like Augustine, Ignatius, Chrysostom, big names in the church that had a huge influence.
And then there's electives you could take that would be a little more specific to time periods. Yeah.
One of the best ones coming up is called Grace and Merit in Medieval Theology. And
Doesn't that just sound like everybody wants to take that?
right? Yeah, but it's
Sign me up. But when you're a seminarian, that is actually, and you kind of laugh at the it sounds ridiculous, but the reality is the things that you learn in a class like that, you do actually see in the parish. And being able to understand them and teach them, it really does matter. So I laugh about it and I make fun of it, but it's actually, it's really important.
One good example of that, so in my church history class, we went through around the time of the Nicene Creed, where they were fighting about who Jesus is. Two natures, one person, how does that work? And there were a lot of people who got it wrong. And my professor always pointed out, the reason this matters isn't because we just like to engage ourselves in some crazy abstract study. It's because if you get wrong who Jesus is, you get wrong what he does for you, namely salvation. If you don't understand who he is, you're not going to understand salvation. And he said, this is why we're studying it, this is why it's important. I mean, it's important in its own right, certainly. But if you're going to preach about salvation to your parishioners, you need to understand about who works that.
Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
I said that a time or two.
Yeah.
You get Jesus right, you get justification right, you got a chance to get everything else right. You get either of those wrong, you're going to get everything else wrong in some way, shape, or form. So, okay. Other questions? Rick.
Apologetics, is it something that is taught as a topic of, this is how you go about trying to address these kinds of things? Or is it more, I'm just going to give you the basis of your faith, and therefore, we're going to assume that the ability to have those conversations in politics with other folks, other denominations and stuff is going to naturally come.
Good question. More so the latter, from what I can tell. Again, I've been here for 10 weeks, been seminary for 10 weeks. But generally, you just focus on, can we say, within the church kind of ministry. I think there might be an apologetics elective, quarter-long, 10-week, a long class you could take, but not as much. If it does happen, I mean, sometimes it just comes up in class. You just talk about it.
Those kinds of things tend to come up in the course of systematics classes. So you're going through, here are the basic doctrines and why we believe what we believe. And so now, here's a challenge to that. How would you address that? And so it's more within the course of a class like that, or a course like some of the different books of the Bible that you might study. That, okay, now here's something that has come up, and here's a controversy that came up as a result of this. What did the church say about that? How do we address that? How would you address that to people today? So it's not generally, here's apologetics. It's more within the course of what you're doing, you're learning these things. Yeah. Okay, so Peter has a whole list of things that look at that, he came prepared like a true seminarian with a list of things to make sure to go through. So what else do you have?
Let's see, what happens at the seminary? So my first item for what happens at the seminary is beer drinking, cigar smoking, and pipe smoking, and some other tomfoolery. Because after all, I mean, you have a bunch of 20-some-year-old guys on campus. Like, you're not going to avoid these things. But in all honesty, it's all in modesty. It's all in moderation, of course. And there's just a lot of good teaching. Like I said about the community, the fact that you have chapel every day, there's preaching, there's always prayer, there's always word, and then once a week on Wednesdays they have the sacrament of the altar, or they'll have it more often if there's feast days where they commemorate a certain saint, and that's just great for everybody. Yes?
Talk about Gemütlichkeit.
Gemütlichkeit? Yeah, okay, so Gemütlichkeit, that's a German word. I don't even know what it means, but...
Yeah, I did at one point, but I don't remember.
I don't know what it means.
Yeah.
It's the Friday gathering, okay? So Friday afternoon, everybody goes into the student commons, just general building hangout area, and you have popcorn, they get a couple kegs, they have a couple beers on tap, everybody just hangs out. Family, there's babies everywhere, crawling around on the floor. It's a great time. You just socialize. Something that, you know, sometimes prospective pastors need to do more often, you know, be able to socialize. But it's a great time. And you make a lot of friends that way. Meet a lot of new people. Yeah.
How many STEM students are there? Men studying ministry in a whole of
Good question. I think close to 200.
200?
Including those on Vicarage, it might be a little over 200. So in my class, and there's 4 classes, in my class was about 40. So, well, actually, so maybe more like 150. I don't know the stats exactly, but something around that.
And then you know you have that at Fort Wayne, you have you know at St. Louis as well. So
That's
yeah.
just a Fort Wayne.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
St.
just a,
Louis has its own.
yeah. So we recently, sorry, Pastor Mike, we recently surpassed them in total number of students.
Yeah, but
For years.
not an overall ability.
Numbers, quality.
That's right.
Like hordes.
All right. What's your wife's life like at seminary? Now she can speak for herself if she likes.
She does have a cold right now. Tell you what, I will do my best to explain it,
All right.
and I will judge based on her reaction whether or not.
Okay,
I got it.
I'll just watch.
It should be clear
And we'll all
to
know.
everybody but me.
Everybody turn and look.
Yeah. So she also comes to chapel pretty much every day. Recently she and Dorothy were sick and that put them under the weather, but pretty much every day the wives and the children come to chapel. And so she's able to get out of the house and socialize with the other wives, which is great for her, and you know, great for me with my friends too. And there's lots of families. She comes to the Mutlakite. There's other events that are just for the wives even. In fact, there's an organization called the SWA, the Seminary Wives Association. And they just get together every now and again, have some food. Sometimes a speaker comes, talks to them about something. Recently it was a professor talking to them about praying the Psalms. It was a lot of fun, and well, I wasn't there, but she told me it was a lot of fun. And there's a lot of stuff for her. She's very much included in the community, and she makes a lot of friends that way. And she's made a lot of friends, even now, after just a few weeks, that are going to be lifelong friends.
That's really important because you get out into the parish, you got to have people that you can call and just vent to, ask questions of, just have the support of, and be able to support them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Questions like, hey, my kid did this crazy thing. How did you deal with it when that came up? That's very helpful to have other moms like that.
I'd say that's not what it looks like for everybody though.
Sure.
Like, we live 25 miles from
Yep.
campus when we were at seminary.
Yep.
And the first 2 years I worked full time. And so I didn't get to go to much of that and I didn't get to participate. I don't think I ever went to the chapel.
Probably not because it was during the day when you were teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
I lived
mean,
off of my wife.
Depending on your
so-
situation, all that stuff,
That's true. Yeah.
It varies.
And I don't know how much it
Showing my-
varies at Fort Wayne, but at St. Louis, that was a pretty, unless you lived on campus or right next to, well, you didn't live right next to campus because it was expensive. But
Right.
if you lived on campus, you had much more ability to be a part of that community.
Yeah.
So where he has friends from seminary, I did not, my friends from seminary were people I taught with
Yeah.
at the Lutheran school.
So you guys live on campus?
No, we live near campus. So Fort Wayne doesn't have on-campus married housing. They're working towards it, but they don't have it yet. They have a big cluster of houses of people who just rent to seminarians like a minute down the road. So they sort of have it, but not really. So that might be part of the reason there's a difference. Most of the people actually just happen to live close because that's where the availability is. I know that actually has changed over time, and yet there are still. I have buddies who live pretty far away. So that's true. That's true. It's not the same for everybody. It's just my new experience.
Differences,
Yeah. Everybody's experience is going to be a little different.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Other questions? Yes.
So, for your fellow seminarians, were most of them raised Lutheran, or have you had some people who are newer?
Good question. You'd be surprised how many people weren't like raised Lutheran. There's a lot of guys, probably not more than half, it's still a minority, but a lot of guys who were Roman Catholic, a lot of evangelicals are disillusioned with the whole thing, and all of a sudden, usually this is what it is, they stumble across the Book of Concord, or they stumble across a small catechism, and they're like, wow, this makes sense. And they start looking into it more. And then all of a sudden, they're going to become pastors. That happens with a lot of guys. A lot are raised Lutheran, the majority, I would say. And there's a lot of second career guys too, especially at Fort Wayne. Guys some guys in their 50s, in their late 50s with grandkids. He was looking at me the other day, he's like, wow, he's just baffled that he has grandkids. I'm 21, and we're just in the same class studying together, but it's great.
It's the same way in St. Louis.
Was it last
Yeah.
second career guys? Yeah. Which is cool.
I would say probably half my class is second career
Really?
guys. It seemed like, yeah.
Yeah, but there's mostly Lutheran, some other guys, and it's cool to hear from them, too, the guys that came over, the reasons.
So, obviously, you were raised Lutheran, and you're not a PK, but you're a teacher.
That's right, pastor, grandparents.
So, how do you think your experience with your Deno will inform your becoming a pastor?
Yeah, good question. I didn't know him when he was active in the ministry. I was too young. He was retired. I might have only heard him preach a handful of times. But it certainly, that's a good question. It certainly gives me a sense of connection with him. Sort of a,
Would you say kinship?
couldn't say that. So probably not as much as some other guys who come from pastors' families where they were actively under them. I mean, it's just a situation. I was too young. But what's cool, I'm getting some of his stoles for when I'm ordained. I'll be able to wear some of his stoles. That's pretty cool. I also have some of his notes. I think we have some of his sermons and stuff. So hope to take a look at those sometime and see what the family tradition is and how he preaches. So as of now, I mean, not a ton, and that's okay. But it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool. Jake?
Just with the understanding of vocation, there's got to be a struggle, but maybe also a blessing of understanding your vocation as a seminary student, looking for the pastoral role, and then also the family, being the husband, the father, and having that passion for the reading and the studying and everything like that, but also knowing and remembering your vocation as a father and a husband and all that.
That's probably the biggest area where seminarians have to figure that out and struggle, because a lot of us, most of us, have a wife and probably children too, and there's a lot of reading, there's a lot of assignments, and yet you cannot neglect your family. It's almost a strange thing to hear from professors and fellow seminarians, but it's like, look, sometimes you just have to not do all the reading. I know it sounds like, wow, yeah, college kids love to hear that. But, I mean, seriously, sometimes you just need to lead your family in devotions. Be there for them when they're struggling. This is important, and that's a hard thing to balance. It's very hard. I'm not perfect at it. And it'll be, you just gotta struggle through it and learn to do it. But that's probably the biggest juggling act of my life at the moment. So yeah, there's certain things that you cannot sacrifice with your family every day. You need to pray with them.
And that's where the pastor's wife, or future pastor's wife, has a role to say, nope, you need to be home.
Yeah, yeah. So go ahead.
It is nice. We have a lot of second year friends, and so they will tell Peter, this reading is not worth it. Just do this reading.
And I mean, it's not ideal, but you have to make those calls because you just don't have the time to do everything.
It's like real ministry.
Yeah.
Guess what? You don't have the time to do all of the things that
Yeah.
you like to do. You got to pick and choose, and you better not sacrifice your family
Right.
as something that you choose not to do, right?
Yeah.
Not to give time to.
And it's hard.
My vicar supervisor, Barry Hankey, he just died this last year, but he was telling me about a vicar that came after me that had started to come in on his day off and read in his office. And he said, what are you doing here? Well, it's quiet here. I can read and not get interrupted. He said, go home to your family. you're not allowed to be here. Because he was neglecting his family to just be off and doing his own thing. And he needed to learn, no, you got to go home and actually spend time. Not, you know, the quality time versus quantity of time is kind of a lie. You have to have a quantity of time that is quality time. You can't just say it's going to be this amount of time, but it'll be really quality. No, you got to be there consistently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say most seminarians struggle with trying to be too academic. So they need to be urged to, I remember one pastor said, best advice I can give you seminarians is go to a party every once in a while. And he's right in a sense, and also, be at home with your family, but get out, don't do things other than stick your nose in a book, as great as books are.
Yeah. Okay. Other questions? So, a couple things. I forgot to put the church thing out, but we'll get that out. As a congregation, we're supporting Peter, and that's important because we need to have future pastors. We have a future pastor, hopefully, right? And so we give thanks to God for that. That's a cool thing for a congregation to be able to say, here's somebody that came from our church, and he's going to go and be able to minister to some other congregation and be their shepherd. That's awesome. So thanks be to God for that, and that we're able to give some support. If you would like to give direct support, because do seminaries need to eat?
Every once in a while.
Okay, all right. Yeah, you still got to be able to pay for having a vehicle and for food and somewhere to live and diapers and all the like, right? We will put the church thing out, whatever that thing is, and you can put money in that, and we'll get it to Peter. You can just hand money to Peter. And we're going to have that out on Sunday as well, because and we're going to be doing that quarterly. We're going to put it out specifically just saying, hey, if you want to give some support, here's how you can do that. Because one of the great stressors for a lot of pastors coming right out of seminary is they're broke. And if we can mitigate that and make that less of a stress, that's a great blessing. Yeah?
Also, it's not just financial.
Yeah?
If you want to put notes of encouragement,
Yes.
any prayers.
Yes. So we'll have the church box out. If you want to put a card in there, a note of encouragement in there, do it. Hey, buddy. If you would keep him in prayer. One of the things I think is real. Where does Satan attack? Well, he's going to attack at the seminary. Because if you can get them before they're even out into the parish, you've won big time. So there's a spiritual war that goes on at the seminary. For me, it was one of the hardest times, honestly, in a lot of ways, because I think there is that spiritual battle that is happening. And so, yeah, he needs prayer. His family needs prayer. And yeah, those notes of encouragement, they mean a lot. Goes a long way. And Glenda has cards that you can just take from right over there and make use of, and she would be really happy that you did, right?
And I have more at home I'm gonna bring.
Okay. Other questions? Anything else?
Speaking of support, if you'd like to support in a broader way to all seminarians, in a specific way that we really appreciate, is called the Food Co-op. So it's a food bank for seminarians. We get so many points. My wife and I get 100 a month. It's open once a week. You go and you get some of your basic foods. It's not everything. We can't do all our shopping there, but a lot of it. including diapers, wipes, eggs, milk, meat, cereal, you know, some of the basic stuff. And it's a huge blessing. I mean, that's great for us seminarians. So if you want to, like, literally put food on our tables, that'd be a great thing to donate to, the food co-op.
We had bars of soap that lasted us for how many years after seminary?
Did you get one every week?
We moved to Illinois, so it was at least. It was a contest between him and his brother who was gonna run out of soap first.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's have a prayer, and then if you could be so kind as to help us get set back up for Sunday, that would be greatly appreciated. But then, Peter, I don't think is going to run out the door real fast. I think you'll have a chance to talk to him.
Mental nice treats.
Well, let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for this evening, for the opportunity to spend time with Peter and hearing from him. The path that he's on, the opportunities that he has for study, the support that he receives from the seminary community and from his home congregation as well. It's a blessing that we are able to send him to the seminary and to support him. We ask that you would continue to watch over him in his studies, that they would equip him to be able to serve faithfully, that you would also be with his family as they continue along this path with him, and that you would sustain them, support them, and encourage them. We give thanks for the opportunity tonight simply to gather together, to share food, to share conversation, and to be reminded of how you call men into the office of holy ministry to serve, how you also call people to be Lutheran school teachers and directors of Christian education and deaconesses and various other things as well. But we ask that you would continue to watch over the seminaries, those professors who teach and equip future pastors, and those men who are training. Bless them, equip them, and sustain them. In Jesus' name, amen.